Hello, this is Christopher again. Uh, I'm still reading Under Crescent Cross, The Jews in the Middle Ages by Mark R. Cohen. I'm a little over halfway through, and it's it's fun to read. It's certainly biased. Um, let's see, it's coming from obviously a Jewish perspective, and the author does put a lot of ideas and motives and such in the heads of different people. Now, that's easy to see and easy to overlook, and like me coming from a Christian or Catholic bias, I could see or imagine different motives for different things, Um, but one thing that I've noticed, or that I've been thinking of in here, is in the oppression of the Jews, both in Islam and in Christendom. More so in Christendom, it's kind of surprising to see that really Jews in Christendom were much more oppressed than Jews in Islam a lot of the time. Uh, but again, I think that so much of the records have been destroyed that the complete accuracy of that, I'm not sure. Um, the great Moses Maimonides, he uh, he seemed to think that it was much worse in the Muslim nations than in the Christian nations. But uh, a lot of a lot of evidence shows that it's other than that. Now, one of the things that I was, sticking to the immigration theme that I had in the last recording. Um, in Christendom, the Jewish people were not allowed to have certain jobs. A lot of them weren't allowed. A lot of times they weren't allowed to own land. Um, they couldn't be in agriculture. They couldn't be in the trades. They couldn't join the guilds, so on and so forth. And they were pretty much excluded from a lot of the better work. Now, they ended up being able to get a niche in money lending, which is something I've known that for a very long time. That's how the Jewish people really got into money lending, because Christians were not allowed to commit the sin of usury, which is charging interest on loans, whereas the Jews were exempted from that because they weren't Christian, and in the Old Testament they're not allowed to charge usury on fellow Jewish people, but they could on the Gentiles, being Christians and Muslims. And so that kind of became their niche, that and trading. But many of the other uh, forms of employment they couldn't really be a part of, and that brings to mind the whole idea of the illegal immigrant here, and their ploy of only being able to get low wage jobs uh, due to their circumstances and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, there's a lot of difference there, but there's also a lot of similarity in that our society is excluding them from certain work that they could do, that they're able to do, that they're maybe have the education for sometimes, but they can't be employed in their market, because they are really, in all reality, they're a subclass of people in our country, in many ways, in many practices. So that was one thing that I've been kind of contemplating while reading this book. Um, I've been doing a lot of work, so a lot of my contemplating time uh, hasn't yet happened. But I think that we should all, try to read as much as we can, and that uh, the more we read, the more we try on other people's brains. Like I said in the last episode, that I had once heard it said that to read a book is to try on another man's brain, for a short period, and I think that we should all do that on a very regular basis, at least as regular as we can. Um, Now, the books that I'm reading right now, they actually came from a discussion that I had on Facebook, and we were talking, or I had made a comment on a post stating that I thought that our public school system should go back to a classical style of education, and I started talking about Western civilization and how I consider it to be the prime civilization, the really the best civilization that came. And by that I was talking about like the Western Christian civilization and Western civilization, coming from the Reformation into the Enlightenment into modern times. I think that Western civilization began to intellectually destroy itself, really starting with the Protestant Reformation. And I think the Protestant Reformation led to the Enlightenment, and then led to the whole entire atheist and scientism movement, and really kind of harmed philosophy a lot. But that's a kind of a tangent. But my real thought was that I think that our public schools should go to a classical education system where high school starts to go through, the Greek writings, then the Latin writings, then the medieval writings, medieval Renaissance writings, and then the later Enlightenment and modern writings, and that we should cultivate an education system where maybe children will have to go to school for high school 1 or 2 extra years, but graduate with a bachelor's degree, which there was a great man, Dr. Adler, who had that idea, and that idea sounded really great to me. And there's this homeschool curriculum called Angelicum, which now has accomplished that, and that's what I want to use for my children. My wife and I want to use Angelicum, and with that, you go to school, or your children go to school for an extra year and graduate with a bachelor's degree and have that whole awesome background. Now that homeschool also, starting in 4th grade, has online once a week Socratic dialogues among their peers with somebody guiding them. Now that costs a little bit of extra money, and then also if you want to pursue the university degree for high school, that also costs a little bit more money, but it's much less expensive than say actually going to school for a bachelor's degree. And also it gives that foundation where your children aren't going to lose their faith, because they have that great strong theological and philosophical foundation to be able to combat the ideas, the lies, and the misrepresentations that so many of our universities throw at our children. And obviously we know that, well, maybe not obviously, but it's pretty well known that the university system is chock full of far left-leaning professors who have very strange ideas about many things. And so we need to protect our children by giving them the armor and the ammunition to combat the false philosophy, the lies, and so on and so forth, so they can understand, reason, and overcome the falsity in the philosophies and ideas that are coming at them in university if they go to a secular university. But that said, me saying using Western civilization, which really what I was meaning was Christian civilization. Christian civilization was the core of what I was meaning, rather than Western civilization. And so I had people accusing me of being a bigot and a racist, and then also being misogynist, because most of the authors in classical education are male. But that's just historic, like a good portion of the authors throughout history were male, disproportionately male. Um, and obviously, people who know me know that there's nothing racist about me. Uh, uh, the language of my house is usually Spanish now. Okay, so I'm definitely not not a racist. And when I was talking about Western civilization, I wasn't meaning like that. I'm not against the idea of adding in, the writings of of the East, and of even of other religions. Like I'd even already come up with some reading lists, like summertime reading lists for. I mean, my children are very young, and I know I've already gone way too far beyond that. But I was going through all this stuff even years before I started having a family, because I knew I'd either become a family man or a priest. So I kind of looked into a lot of different things, and really was already a big believer in homeschool. So for many years I'd looked into it and read about it and so on and so forth, and knowing that these curriculums, the classical education curriculums that I believe in, really only cover the Western civilization. I'd begun to come up with other lists, like the Kibana for Africa, or the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the major writings of Confucius, and there's other different books that I'd come up with in my own mind that I thought would be great to make a summertime reading curriculum. Not so much as academic as the regular school year, because definitely children need that break. I think they need that fun, but I think in my estimation that it is best to keep the reading going, so could integrate the other civilizations' writings during the summer, as well as other great writings of the saints and what have you, just to keep the mind going. Like when I was growing up, my mom used to have us do a competition. Whichever one of me and my brothers would read the most books during the summer would get to go to Disneyland. So I really think that summer reading for children in school is a very important thing, although not adding extra academic things on top of that, because they're children. They need to be children. They need to be kids. They need to have fun. Have summer camp. Go camping with the family. Go to the beach and just have a good time. We all want to do that. We all like to do that, and we definitely need to foster that for our children, in my opinion. But yeah. So that's kind of how, like, this book, the last book, and I'm not sure if the next book I'm going to read is going to be also in that list, but I have that book with me on the boat, which is a book, I can't remember the name of it, but it has to do with the economic impact of the slave trade, meaning the modern African slave trade, or modern, as like the slave trade that had slaves in this country and what have you. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to reading it. It looks very technical. It looks like a much deeper read than this or the last. And I have a number of books here with me that I want to read. So we'll see which one I jump onto next. But we'll try to discuss this more, and any ideas you have, thoughts you have, discussions you want to have, any criticism, negative or positive, go ahead and leave it in the comments. Like I said in the past, don't insult me. If you disagree with me, or you think I'm wrong, you think there's something not quite right with the way I'm thinking, buy me a book and send it to me, or send me a book recommendation. If I have the funds to get it, maybe I will. If not, hey, I'm not a rich man. I got a family. I'll give you my P.O. box. You can send it to me. Until next time, I guess y'all have a great day, and thank you for watching. Bye.